In the shadows of towering temples carved from stone and bathed in the relentless sun, a force unlike any other took shape. The Khmer Army was more than just soldiers wielding swords and spears. It was an enigma wrapped in blood and ritual, a living web of power that held together an empire built on both faith and conquest. Beneath the grand facade of Angkor's temples, where gods and kings intertwined their fates, the army's ranks were whispered about in both reverence and fear. Their hierarchy was not merely a system of command, but a reflection of cosmic order, warriors bound by sacred duty, their lives intertwined with the rhythm of war and the prayers of monks. This was a legion where myth met reality, where the clash of iron echoed the chants of ancient spirits. As we unravel the layers of the Khmer Army's structure and ranks, we dive deep into a world of blood-soaked fields, secret rites, and a discipline as harsh as the jungle itself. The story of the Khmer Army is a journey through time, dark, immersive, and unforgettable. Prepare yourself to walk among these veiled warriors and discover the brutal beauty of their world. Part 1. Shadows of War, the rise and reign of the Khmer Army. In the dense jungles and sprawling river plains of ancient Cambodia, where the shadow of the mighty Angkor Wat cast an eternal gloom, the Khmer Army rose like a dark tide, unyielding, relentless, and shrouded in a silence heavy with death and discipline. It was a force forged by centuries of brutal conflict and spiritual belief, a legion as much defined by its iron ranks as by the myths that wove through its very core. This was no ordinary army. It was the backbone of an empire whose bloodied history remains etched into the very stones of its temples. The origins of the Khmer Army stretch back to the 9th century, birthed from the turbulent ashes of fractured kingdoms and foreign invasions. Early Khmer rulers understood that survival depended on more than just swords and shields. It required a structure built on fear, loyalty, and an unbreakable chain of command. At the summit stood the Devaraja, the God King, whose divine authority was not just spiritual but martial. To him, the army was an extension of his divine will, a living instrument to carve his dominion across the jungle-cloaked lands. Beneath the king, the military hierarchy unfurled like the branches of a gnarled tree. The highest generals, often members of the royal family or nobility, were entrusted with vast armies and territories, serving as both commanders and governors. Their power was absolute on the battlefield, but also balanced by complex court intrigues and the ever-watchful eyes of temple priests who served as spiritual overseers. These priests performed ceremonies believed to imbue the soldiers with divine protection, sealing their fate with blessings and curses that weighed as heavily as their iron armor. At the core of the Khmer Army lay the captains and lieutenants, men hardened by countless campaigns who bore the brutal responsibility of discipline and training. Their lives were measured not just by victories, but by the survival of their men soldiers who were often conscripts, drawn from villages, farmers turned warriors by royal decree. This transformation was harsh. The army demanded obedience and sacrifice above all else. Food was rationed tightly. Survival depended on endurance, the silent acceptance of pain, and the ability to march through monsoon mud and sweltering heat. Rank and status were marked not only by title, but by distinctive armor and regalia. High-ranking officers wore elaborately decorated helmets crowned with motifs of mythical serpents, symbols of protection and power. Common soldiers bore simpler garb, but were no less fierce, trained in the use of the kreese and bow, skilled in guerrilla tactics shaped by centuries of jungle warfare. The Khmer knew the land intimately, using rivers, dense foliage, and hidden trails to ambush enemies and defend their sacred cities. The army's organization reflected the empire's need for both flexibility and overwhelming force. It was divided into infantry, cavalry, and an elite corps of war elephants. These elephants were not mere beasts of burden, but towering war machines clad in iron and ridden by skilled mahods, their presence turning the tide in battles with terrifying force. Their trumpeting roars echoed through the forests, a primal sound that struck fear into opposing armies. Yet war was only one side of the Khmer soldiers' existence. Behind every campaign lay a world steeped in ritual and superstition. Before battle, priests would lead soldiers to sacred temples, chanting prayers and offering sacrifices to ensure victory and safe passage to the afterlife. the belief in reincarnation and divine favor was inseparable from the soldier's identity. Failure was not just defeat, but a spiritual condemnation. The discipline within the ranks was as much a product of religious devotion as military command, binding the men into a singular, almost fanatical force. Historical records, inscriptions etched in stone and preserved by time, reveal tales of great Khmer generals whose names still stir. Jayapha Mantuju, the warrior king, transformed the army into a disciplined, nearly invincible force that expanded the empire's borders and fortified Angkor as a fortress city. His reign was marked by relentless campaigns against rival states, where the Khmer soldiers fought not just for land, but to uphold the divine mandate of their king. In his shadow, the army was both a hammer of conquest and a shield of protection, defending the empire's sprawling temples and the sacred relics they housed. But the Khmer army's might was not eternal. As the centuries wore on, the very structure that had made it formidable became brittle. Court intrigues, shifting alliances, and the rise of neighboring powers chipped away at its foundation. Yet even in decline, the army's rituals and ranks persisted, a ghostly echo of a once unassailable force. Soldiers remained bound by ancient codes, their armor rusting but their spirits undimmed, standing watch over temples that grew silent with time. To understand the Khmer army is to glimpse a civilization where war and faith intertwined so completely that one could not exist without the other. Every rank was a link in a chain forged by blood and belief. Every soldier a bearer of a legacy written in both stone and scar. Their stories are carved into the very bones of the land, silent, dark, and eternal. Part 2. Beneath the armor, life and rituals. Within the Khmer ranks, beyond the thunder of hooves and clashing steel, beneath the iron and leather that marked rank and command, lay the hidden lives of the Khmer soldiers, men and women tethered to an existence shaped by survival, ritual, and a relentless code that blurred the line between mortal and divine. This was a world where every breath taken, every morsel eaten, and every prayer whispered was a thread in the vast, dark tapestry of empire and war. Life within the ranks was harsh and unforgiving. Soldiers were far from the glory of kings and generals. Most came from villages, farmers, uprooted from their fields and thrust into the grinding machine of military service. The rhythm of their days was dictated not by sunlight, but by the ceaseless demands of discipline. Before dawn, they trained in the muddy fields outside the camps, mastering the spear, the bow, and the krisan, asymmetrical dagger imbued with symbolic power, as feared for its deadly precision, as revered for its spiritual significance. Food was scarce and monotonous, a simple stew of rice and bitter herbs, sometimes supplemented by fish caught from the Mekong or small game trapped in the jungle. Yet, this meager sustenance was laced with meaning. Communal meals were ritual acts, bonding soldiers in shared hardship and preparing them mentally for the chaos of battle. Eating was never merely survival, but a quiet preparation for the violence to come. The soldiers' days were punctuated by ritual. Before each campaign, entire battalions were led to temples, where priests in elaborate headdresses invoked the protection of deities and spirits. Incense smoke curled upward, wrapping the warriors in a veil of sanctity as chants echoed off stone walls carved with the faces of gods and kings long past. These rites were believed to imbue the soldiers with strength and to shield them from wounds both mortal and spiritual. Failure in battle was not just a physical defeat, but a stain on one's soul, believed to risk eternal unrest. Ranks within the Khmer army dictated more than military function, they shaped identity. The lowest soldiers, often conscripts, bore simple markings, but even these were etched with symbolism. Armbands embroidered with the serpent naga or the fierce lion signified loyalty to different regiments and their sacred protectors. Mid-level officers, scarred by countless campaigns, carried the weight of both command and the lives of those under them. Their armor was more intricate helms adorned with gold leaf and layered chainmail, and their role was a brutal balance of encouragement and ruthless discipline. At the pinnacle stood the royal guards, the king's personal legion. These warriors were chosen not only for skill, but for unwavering loyalty and spiritual purity. Clad in resplendent armor, forged from bronze and adorned with intricate Khmer motifs. They were as much symbols of divine will as protectors of flesh and blood. Their presence in battle was a terrifying omen to enemies, for to strike down a royal guard was to invite the wrath of gods. Elephants loomed as the ultimate symbol of might and mysticism. Trained from birth, these massive beasts were draped in protective armor and adorned with royal colors. The mahouts who commanded them were often part priests, part warriors, trained in both combat and sacred rites to bind the spirit of the elephant to the Khmer cause. Their trumpeting charge shattered enemy lines and shattered morale, turning the tide of many a bloody battle. Yet, the army's strength was not just in arms and elephants, but in the subtle art of survival. In the jungle's oppressive heat and choking humidity, disease and exhaustion were as deadly as any blade. Soldiers learned to read the signs of poison plants, to hunt quietly, and to move unseen beneath the canopy. Camouflage was natural mud smeared across faces and armor dulled to shadow, and stealth became as essential as strength. The Khmer fought not only with steel, but with patience, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, vanishing into the wilderness as if swallowed by the forest itself. The social fabric within the ranks was complicated by superstition and hierarchy. Soldiers sought the favor of shamans who crafted talismans believed to ward off death. These charms, worn beneath armor, were said to carry the power of ancient spirits. The line between soldier and spiritual devotee blurred, as warriors carried not only weapons, but prayers etched on palm leaves and relics blessed in hidden temples. The fear of death was constant, but met with fatalistic reverence. Each battle was a step on a journey toward the afterlife, where the honored dead would join their ancestors among the stars. Even in moments of reprieve, the army was a crucible of tension and resilience. Camps were filled with whispered tales of past glories and warnings of betrayal. Soldiers shared scant rations but rich stories, tales of monstrous beasts lurking in the jungle, of vanished comrades, of kings who wielded power like a curse. Music and dance, often performed by temple artists attached to the army, offered fleeting relief from the endless march of war. These performances were more than entertainment, they were prayers cast into the darkness, a desperate grasp at hope. The Khmer Army's structure was a reflection of the Empire's solar fusion of mortal ambition and divine will, discipline and superstition, brutality and ritual. Each rank was a thread in a vast shadowed tapestry, where history was both made and remembered. Though centuries have passed, the echoes of their footsteps linger in the stones of Angkor, in the twisted roots of the jungle, and in the stories passed from generation to generation. As we close this chapter of the Veiled Legion, we carry forward the weight of their legacy not merely as warriors of flesh and blood, but as timeless guardians of a culture carved from stone, fire, and shadow. Until next time, stay safe, and see you in the next history.